Good morning. We've got Richard Sawka on again, a professor for European and Russian studies. There he is. Good morning. Hi, thanks for joining us again. This is obviously, we've talked to you a few weeks ago when the situation was quite differently, and we thought this could, there could be an impasse for a while, though you did warn that, we'd be closer to war in Europe than we had been since 1945. Nevertheless, I have to confess to being quite surprised when actually Putin did send in troops into the Ukraine. Were you surprised at all?
Yes, I was, certainly to the extent of it. I had predicted, and we had talked about the possibility of some sort of pushback from the two republics, Donetsk and Lugansk, at least to give them a security zone. Because as you may know, 81% of the attacks over the last 7 years, this is UN figures, came from the Ukrainian side onto the so-called separatist republics, leading to a very difficult life in the city of Donetsk, which is on a borderline. When this was recognized on the 21st of this month, then I thought that would be it, maybe a pushback, but the full-scale land invasion was anticipated but unexpected at the same time. And not just me, of course. Zelensky, President Zelensky of Ukraine, also was trying to play it down. And I've been reading a vast amount of expert comment, and all of us didn't expect it because, as Metternich said, it may be worse than a blunder, but it's not. It's a mistake. It's a mistake which could have and will have huge consequences, and it really has. All around. A full-scale land invasion was something completely in a different scale, a different order entirely, like the siege of Berlin in 1945. This is just something else. Though one has to say orders have been given to Russian forces to minimize civilian casualties. And that's one reason why they've been going relatively slowly. But as they get bogged down, who knows what will happen.
I'm going to show you I'm going to show on screen a tweet by John Pilger, who says, news you won't read. On Thursday, Putin reportedly offered peace if Ukraine embraced neutrality and rejected NATO's arms. I did not see that. Indeed, he's right about that. Is that correct? Did you hear about this as well?
No, it's yes, Russia has sent peace negotiators to Minsk, so there's a delegation waiting, and those are the conditions. So I don't know what he was referring to, but interestingly enough, it wasn't Putin who was saying this, it was Zelensky finally actually accepting what Russia's been saying they should have accepted for the last decade, but certainly as the crisis has developed. They were saying, look, neutrality, no arms, such like, and it's, Ukraine is not going to be joining NATO in the next decade or more anyway. So all NATO had to do was to declare what was in fact the case, but they couldn't do it. They couldn't accept to give, and it's not a concession, it's just plain common sense, but it was considered in Western media as appeasement, and that endless analogy with Munich, which is catastrophic. A better analogy actually would be they should have had sensible discussions with Stalin in the 1930s. This is probably a controversial position, but at least as we know, as the war led up in August 1939, Stalin was waiting for some sort of deal, instead of which the British sent a very low-level delegation. At that point, he knew it was a disaster, that nothing was going to happen, and we got the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. We are enthralled to history, and we simply cannot escape it. But we always have to choose which historical moment we will use as the metaphor and the analogy.
How do you think this is going to play out now? Liz Truss is saying this is going to take 10 years, probably. Do you agree with that assessment? Is there going to be a guerrilla warfare? What's happening there?
Yes, this is an absolute turning point. The worst thing is that we, me, you, all of us have spent most of our lives, and I certainly have spent my academic and scholarly life trying to avert this situation. We've been warning about it, about NATO militarism, expansion, and so on, that it will lead to consequences. We are now in those consequences. It's catastrophic. It's above all catastrophic, obviously, for the Ukrainian people who are, I know a lot of people, their friends now, who are suffering so much, who are, Ukrainian people, not the elite, wanted a peace. And similarly, Russia. We are in, for a very long haul, the the best position is 10 years and a guerrilla warfare and entrenched. The worst position is that we escalate. And, you know, in my view, we said it when we met a few weeks ago, we're closer to nuclear war today than we were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. This has every potential because Washington, and I've been reading a lot of stuff out of there in the last few days, their vision, their paradigm, their very model of the world, and including Keir Starmer here as well, is so false and is so based on the logic which got us into this position. So I can see no way out of a position and nothing. And in fact, the sanctions are devastating. I mean, let's not minimize them. It is devastating. So I feel very angry, betrayed that our leaders in the West and Ukrainian leaders who refused to accept what they're now accepting, but too late. I mean, there has to be a way out. But this is going to mean that the Russian people who I've been working with for so many years are now going to suffer. And they also don't deserve this.
Indeed.
So we've been so ill-served by this generation of leaders.
We talked about in the paper review earlier on the anti-war. I mean, you know, as living in Britain, I think our task is to convince our leaders to stop going to war and sending lethal aid. I mean, you know, what a term that is. But, you know, for Russians in Russia, obviously, they also will be trying to stop their government, hopefully, and that's the kind of people we want to connect with, don't we? How is the anti-war sentiment in Russia? You did mention last time an invasion is not actually very popular in Russia.
Is deeply unpopular. So the fact that thousands have gone to demonstrate against this war is, you know, I feel very cheered by that, because this full-scale military invasion, I mean, a pinprick, sort of perhaps a small barrage, something or other, what Biden himself called back in December a minor war, you know, was a sort of, and it was expected, but this full-scale one. So yes, there's a movement. And in fact, then, you know, as sanctions, these sanctions will be devastating. I mean, this is economic warfare of the sort that was launched against Japan in August 1941. And Japan then felt it had no alternative but to do what it did, which was absolutely dreadful, of course, in Pearl Harbor in December of that year. So Russia, with its back to the wall and with an increasingly isolated Putin, and the goal in the West now is regime change. I mean, it's as obvious as that. And just one point to pick up one point you make, the fact that the British were sending military arms for the last few years and signed a £1.5 billion pound or dollar, I can't remember which, deal to modernize the Ukrainian Navy and so on, were all escalatory steps, which in Moscow's calculation was, because Obama refused to do this, send lethal weapons, as you may have hinted at, because he knew it would escalate. And the British escalated and escalated, and we really should hold our leaders to account for the fact that they have added fuel to the fire. I mean, I'm not sure we reverted so much in the end, but yeah, we're in a situation now where I think we here and in Russia, we should unite indeed to say, stop this militarism on all sides and stop this logic, because as I suggest, who knows where it'll end.
Thank you, Richard. I think the question of sanctions is quite important. We're going to discuss it with other speakers later, but it strikes me as well as we'll be, you know, hitting people who probably out on the streets fighting against the war, and these are the people who will suffer most from sanctions. It's not the oligarchs; they can sit this out easily with their billions and billions hidden away everywhere. It's the little people, the working class, the poor, like in Iran. Those are the people who are suffering from sanctions. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. You're about to travel, so thank you for coming on.
I'll stay for a few more minutes, then go. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Bye-bye.